So waiting on Mr. Sanders. I'll give him a minute or two. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Hopefully folks will join here pretty quickly. So we were in closed session. Could you please read us back into open session?
Happy to. I move that this council certify by recorded vote that to the best of each council member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and identified in the motion convening the closed session were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed session.
Second. Okay.
All in favor? Okay. So we're beginning our business meeting tonight. For those who didn't hear this earlier, the mayor is out tonight, and I'm here in his stead. Okay. We will please begin the business meeting with a moment of silence. Okay, are there any announcements?
I didn't know if this will be announced at another point, but just wanted to make it known to the public that with the heat wave and heat index being over 100 degrees for the next week, that several cooling centers are being opened throughout the city, and just let the community know that those cooling centers will be available at Key Rec Center, the Central Library, and Tonsler Recreation Center throughout this week.
Thank you for that reminder.
I had the same thing pulled up, so.
Excellent. Awesome.
Yeah.
Any other announcements? Okay. I don't have any proclamations listed tonight, or any proclamations, anyone? Okay. Moving right along. Any recognitions? I don't think so. Okay. So we turn now to community matters. There are 4 pre-registered speakers, leaving 12 slots for additional speakers on community matters. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. We'll now open the floor to pre-registered speakers. So our first speaker available, that would be Mr. Ryan Mickles. No? Okay. Go to number 2, Catano de Campos Lopez, coming to speak on the transit strategic plan.
It's on its way, but not.
Okay. We'll come back to you if that's okay. Next, I'm going to try hard here. Sive O'Flynn.
Yeah.
Thank you. Welcome. Sorry for...
You did pretty well. I'm Sive O'Flynn. I'm a Climate Justice Policy Manager at the Community Climate Collaborative, C3. I'm here to talk about some of my reflections on the Transit Strategic Plan. CAT and City Council have clearly paid very close attention to the needs reported by Charlottesville area residents in the design of the TSP. For C3, as a climate justice focused organisation, it's a cause for both celebration and relief to see equity considerations woven into every aspect of the plan. From the explicit focus on connecting transit with neighbourhoods whose residents have been left out of its design in the past, to the finding that reintroducing fares would reduce CAT riders by 10% and reduce CAT's DRPT merit operating assistance grant funding by 5%. Despite equitable advances, though, it would be remiss of us as a climate justice focused organisation to ignore the absence of a clear process for the incorporation of public engagement that was sought and given by community members. Apparent equity wins will always be tempered by gaps in procedural justice. We strongly encourage CAT and the City Council to pursue procedural justice in any future amendments to the TSP, and we look forward to being active partners during that process. The TSP claims that COVID-19 significantly accelerated ridership decline, but our analysis using CAT's own ridership figures submitted to the FTA shows that ridership is now roughly where the downward trend between 2015 and 2019 projected it would be. In other words, showing almost no impact to ridership from the pandemic. In a blog post that I wrote last week discussing both the wins and the gaps within the TSP, which I shared with the City Council by email on Friday, I note that while the TSP engages a good deal with ridership, it doesn't discuss occupancy at all. Focusing on the climate component of climate justice, C3 has conducted a great deal of analysis showing that occupancy is the most crucial metric when accounting for avoided GHG emissions from personal vehicles. The enormous ridership and occupancy increases required to justify greenhouse gas emissions from diesel buses begs the question, should we instead be investigating the use of diesel hybrid buses of the type used in Champaign-Urbana in Illinois during the transition to a fully zero-emission bus fleet? I invite City Council members and CAT to contact us at C3 to learn more about the specifics from our analysis of occupancy requirements of CAT's intended all-diesel fleet expansion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next on our list is Clay Bowen.
Good evening. My name is Clay Bowen, and I'm currently working as a climate justice policy intern at the Community Climate Collaborative. Being a Charlottesville resident my entire life, I've had the privilege to be raised in an area of excitement, beauty, and safety. My family and I have lived in Ivy for 21 years now. Growing up, I've had the leisure of sitting at the end of my driveway, waiting for my school bus to ferry me to and from school. My parents are both fortunate enough to work jobs that allow them to own cars to commute for their work, errands, and other events. Living 15 minutes outside of the city, without these amenities, we would be left without a method of transportation to essential aspects of our everyday lives. Individuals that are out of reach of the range of CAT and CAT's microtransit face this reality every day. I only discovered while researching the TSP that Jaunt provides transportation by appointment in the Ivy area. These appointments have to be scheduled 24 hours in advance and have their own fluctuations depending on other riders and their respective appointments. This is the sole option for transportation for many citizens of outer Charlottesville and Albemarle County. With that in mind, I was very glad to see that the TSP encouraged the implementation of a regional transit authority, or RTA, in Albemarle County. The implementation of an RTA uniting CAT and Albemarle County would be an enormous step towards accomplishing the needs identified by the community during C3's Act on Climate campaign. The project could even envelop Jaunt and UTS, resulting in better communication, collaboration, and management. It would allow transit routes to be more thorough and efficient, as each service could interact to ensure more historically neglected areas have consistent, reliable transportation. In the meantime, these entities could pool their information from their respective services to launch a mobile app that includes and illustrates each service's routes, stops, and timings, providing riders with convenient and easily accessible information regarding their transportation. The university transit system currently uses an app to convey to their riders the schedules and routes of university lines. As a four-year student at UVA, it has been crucial to my commute to and from classes and would be extremely useful to include other service routes on the app as well for non-UVA riders to use. C3 thanks the City of Charlottesville for their time and consideration. We are happy to endorse the adoption of the TSP this evening and look forward to seeing more in the development of an RTA in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Okay, we have space for, 14 more people. So who would like to go next? Yes, ma'am. Come on up.
Hello.
Please state your name and your topic.
Hi, I'm Robin Hoffman. I am a retired public TV person. And I say that because if you look up Robin Hoffman now on YouTube, you will see the legacy of a lot of nonprofits. It's a hat logo, so you have to look for it because a lot of Robin Hoffmans. But the reason why I'm here today is because I do have this conversation where people meet me on the street or whatever, and they say, how come you don't talk anymore or whatever? But I watch City Council every time. I'm sorry there's no Zoom, because a lot of times it's very inconvenient for me to come here. But today, very crucial thing is I'm old. I have high blood pressure now because of Trump, thank you. And as a result, I cannot be out in the sun. And I want to drive or not drive and be on the bus. But if I sit on one of those things and the bus doesn't arrive just like in 2 minutes, I'm dead, literally. So are all the people that are on blood pressure medications, which means we need to have some sort of canopies or protection, and they're zero. I've been saying this for, I think, 10 years. You know, I've gotten on the Zoom or I've come here explaining that it's really unfair to try to ask for ridership if you're not accommodating for 100 degrees a day in hot sun. And especially if the elderly, like myself, who are retired, want to use the transit system, it's impossible. You will find a lot of dead me's on the benches. So please make that a priority, like quickly. I love that you cleaned up East High. You made it so that I can ride my bike and not get killed. And I love the new signage, so thank you so much. But there should be more signs and more lights and more street pedestrians, and especially for bicycles. I came up with an idea that I've shared with Peter Krebs, that we can have, riders can have apps, so if we get into one of the bike lanes, that it would light up in the street, sort of like, you know, Afton Mountain type of thing, like when it's a fog, you know? And they said it's possible. I even know OSR, Louis, he said he could do it. So please look into those two things real quick. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Mr. Lopez, do you still want to speak?
Yes.
Okay. Please state your name and your topic.
Okay, my name is Caetano de Campos Lopez. Good evening, Vice Mayor Pinkston, City Councilors, City Manager Sanders. I'm representing the Community Climate Collaborative, and today marks a pivotal moment as you consider approving CAT's first transit strategic plan, a document poised to enhance the quality of life for our community members. Our journey to improve local transportation continues, promising a cleaner and more equitable future. Joined by fellow activists, I will briefly recap our path to this point. In 2020, while advocating for climate solutions to be included in Charlottesville fiscal year 2021 budget, Lloyd Snook was present in one of our events, thank you. We noted a bittersweet trend. While there were significant reductions in greenhouse gas emissions from the electrical sector, transportation emissions remain mostly unchanged. Recognizing transportation as a key to achieving the 2050 carbon neutrality goal, we initiated a transportation equity study. This study, featuring a detailed survey that counted nearly 300 answers and multiple focus groups with targeted demographics such as Latinx and African American moms, identified critical areas for improvement in public transportation. We then presented these findings to nearly 20 social justice organizations for feedback and prioritization. These collective efforts led to the launch in 2022 of the Accessible and Clean Transportation Act on Climate petition, supported by nearly 400 community members and 50 institutions. During that period, our work alongside excellent professionals and leaders from organizations like Impact Interfaith Coalition, Move to Health Equity, Piedmont Environmental Council, Livable Civil, and Food Justice Network, and the Center just highlighted the importance of improving our transportation system in order to address many social injustices. I'm happy to say that many of the goals from the Act on Climate petition are now reflected in the Transit Strategic Plan, including no route frequencies exceeding 30 minutes intervals, increase accessibility and safety at bus stops, reduce air and climate pollution from transit, just transition to a low carbon transportation system, zoning reforms, which is not part of this plan, but you all approved a great zoning plan update, transit-oriented developments, and addressing bus driver shortages with better conditions and pay. During the period between 2022, we also noted that during many other important city plans, such as Climate Resilience, Climate Action Plan, and zoning, there was an absence of a transportation planning staff, which is now someone that you have, and we applaud it. We commend you for that. Thank you so much for all the significant strides you made so far, and we encourage you to continue to lead us in the best possible bus route for cleaner transportation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay. Who else would like to speak? Yes, please. Come on up. Please state your name.
My name is Kara Landsberg. I will be talking about the TSP.
Okay.
Good evening, council members. My name is Kara Landsberg. I'm a 17-year-old resident of Fluvanna County and a student at FCHS. I'm here tonight alongside the members of the Community Climate Collaborative who graciously accepted me as an intern this summer. As a rising senior, it's now time for me to make an important decision: where to go to college. In consideration of my options, from offered majors to study abroad programs, I'm drawn back to UVA. I've grown up in Charlottesville as much as Fluvanna. It's not only the city where my family works, the city I was born, but it's also the city that's seen me through the best and worst parts of growing up. Therefore, to not consider UVA as my future alma mater would be disingenuous. I'd be close to home, to my friends and family, who I'm not sure I'm ready to leave just yet. I'd be in my home city, surrounded by the mountains I love, making my way through college comforted by the reminders of my childhood. Wherever I attend, I plan on studying a STEM undergrad with specific interest in remedial acts of climate change, and later attending law school in order to practice environmental law. With my passion for environmental protection, as well as my interest in attending UVA, I'm greatly disheartened at the prospect of the city buying diesel vehicles during the transitional period towards fully carbon neutral city infrastructure in 2050. Most vitally, Seaville's ability to successfully become carbon neutral would be hindered by the addition of more diesel vehicles to the fleet. The planned timeframe to end these purchases in 2027 can only do so much to soothe me and my peers, as we are aware that the use of these buses could continue until 2039. Looking forward to my future as a law student, my heart is weighed down with the knowledge that this plan, I could be forced to ride a carbon-speeding bus well after I've graduated and entered the workforce in Seaville, perpetuating the very use of carbon that I'd fight against in my career. Alongside C3, I advocate for the purchase of diesel hybrid vehicles during CAT's transition to ZEBs in order to actualize Seaville's crucial environmental goals, set a precedent for our neighbors and residents in the fight for climate justice. With this move, Seaville can grow in the ranks of climate-conscious cities like Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, where people in this very room have seen that diesel hybrid buses can outperform diesel buses in reliability and cost-effectiveness. Now I speak to you one last time as a young person rather than an intern. Climate advocacy is my future. Deciding where to go to college may influence my career, but the protection of the environments will influence my rights and safety. So I ask you to consider me, one young woman just as much as part of Seaville as anyone else, who loves this city and who calls for it to be a beacon for climate justice. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Okay. Who else would like to speak? Yes, please, come up, Ms. Cruz.
Good evening. I am Susan Cruz, the Executive Director of the Community Climate Collaborative, where I have worked for more than 5 years. Last October, I came before you to recognize the numerous consequential decisions before you. At that time, we were at a crossroads. Past goal setting had matured into action-oriented decision-making. I am proud to say that this council, this city manager, and this city staff are proving that they are up to the challenge. You have voted in favor of upzoning to address housing affordability. You've acted to approve a pilot of zero-emission buses. You have adopted a budget that includes funds to improve our transit system, support affordable housing, and adds $1 million for each of the next 5 years to climate initiatives. These are each remarkable in their own right. Your role in these decisions is not just significant, it is vital to the well-being of our community. Tonight, 3 more decisions are before you. Many of my colleagues have already spoken about the first, the city's transit strategic plan. Staff have worked hard to get us to this point, and C3 believes this is a strong plan. Charlottesville must improve bus frequency and reliability. This plan does that while also setting a goal to be zero emission by 2040. These combined actions have the potential to put our city on the path to a carbon neutral future. There is always room for improvement. Reducing emissions more quickly, providing for greater community involvement, and paying more attention to bus occupancy are still possible. Council and staff have earned our faith that we can make positive steps in each of these areas. The second decision involves the city's municipal gas system. C3 applauds the city staff who proposed the changes in utility rate structure, which eliminate subsidized hookups for new gas installations. The removal of this incentive to burn fossil fuels and expand gas infrastructure is the right decision, and we are thrilled to see staff put it forward. Finally, C3 is encouraged by the City Climate Team's proposal to create a climate resource hub for Charlottesville residents and businesses. In 2022, the Inflation Reduction Act was signed into law. This legislation injects $370 billion in climate actions aimed at decreasing our CO2 emissions by 40% by 2030. The IRA helps homeowners, renters, and businesses with their rising energy costs by reducing their carbon footprints. LEAP and C3 propose to build and operate a one-stop hub to serve as a resource to ensure that Charlottesville households and businesses have all the tools and information needed to accelerate cost savings and emissions reductions right here at home. Decisions are consequential when they are irreversible, involve uncertainty, have long-term consequences, are interconnected to other goals, and involve the allocation of resources. This city council has not shied away from difficult or consequential decisions. You have embraced them. Thank you so much for choosing climate, choosing mobility and accessibility, and a Charlottesville we're all working to build. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, who's next? All right, we will close community matters, and we will there will be another opportunity for public comment at the end of the meeting, and now we'll move to the consent agenda. Ms. Thomas?
Please bear with me, it's pretty long. Number 2, minutes, March 5th, regular meeting. Number 3, resolutions. Resolution to appropriate $130,713 from the 2024 City Climate Protection Program. Program support grant with LEAP, second reading. And this includes a resolution to authorize the city manager to sign an MOU between the city and Local Energy Alliance Program, or LEAP, for grant funds to support the climate protection program and promote energy performance improvements. Second reading. Let's see. Number 4, resolution to appropriate $172,182 from the Virginia Department of Social Services to serve clients who are receiving auxiliary grants, adoption assistance, and independent living services. Second reading. 5, resolution appropriating $7,988 received from the Virginia Department of Social Services for a percentage of income payment program. Second reading. 6, resolution to transfer $9,064,654 to the city's retirement fund. Second reading. 7, resolution appropriating $45,567 from the Virginia Department of Social Services to use for overtime for Medicaid unwinding. Second reading. 8, resolution to appropriate $10,000 for the Tonsler League. Second reading. 9, ordinance to amend and reordain Chapter 31, Utilities of the Code of the City of Charlottesville, 1990, as amended, to establish new utility rates and service fees for the city gas, water, and sanitary sewer. Second reading. Item number 10 has been moved to the action items for tonight. 11, resolution to reprogram prior year CDBG funds to support ADA accessibility enhancements at a community playground. A minor budget amendment of approximately $46,000. Second reading. 12, ordinance authorizing a forgivable loan to Piedmont Housing Alliance to support redevelopment of Kindlewood Friendship Court Phase 2 for the purpose of producing new housing for low and moderate income persons. Second reading. 13, ordinance to create and enact Level 3 Communications Franchise Agreement. Second reading. 14, ordinance to create and enact Crown Castle Franchise Agreement. Second reading. 15, ordinance to create and enact Brightspeed Franchise Agreement. Second reading. 16, resolution for a water and wastewater leak credit for 2 PIC LLC, $18,212.63.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. That was quite a list. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
I'll move adoption of the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any further questions or comments on the consent agenda from council? Okay, please cast your vote. Motion passes 4-0 to adopt the consent agenda. Mr. Sanders, is there a report from the city manager's office?
Yes, sir. Previously, earlier this year, I think I shared with you all that it was a priority of mine in ongoing efforts to maintain my work plan presentations was to make sure that we brought forward conversations about strategic outcome areas from your strategic plan as adopted in September of last year. There were some topics that we have yet to engage in, bigger discussions, and tonight I have asked Deputy City Manager Marshall to come before you and talk about social equity priorities. That will be directly associated with your commitment to JEDI as a part of your strategic outcome areas adopted in September. So her presentation is a lot of stuff. We've talked about it a few times in preparation for her presentation this evening, and the goal would be to begin that conversation with you on and what else, if there is and what else, and anything else that comes up in the form of questions. Ms. Marshall.
Thank you. Good evening, council and members of the public. Today I'm here to discuss a topic that really lies at the heart of our community's values and aspirations: equity, specifically social equity. As your deputy city manager, it's both a privilege and a shared responsibility to address how we can foster a city where every individual, regardless of background or circumstances, has fair and just opportunities to thrive. Social equity is not just a concept, but can be a guiding principle that shapes our policies, our decisions, and the very fabric of our city's identity. It speaks to the need for inclusivity, for fairness, and justice in all aspects of civic life, from housing and education to healthcare and employment opportunities. This presentation will first help us establish a baseline for how we might define our commitment to JEDI and social equity. I'll outline our current landscape of social equity programs that the organization is engaged in using a pretty unique framework, the social determinants of health. Most local governments would not think to maybe consider that. And the analysis will look at both the progress we've made, but I won't forget the challenges that we face. And I'm giving fair warning, council. I'll invite each of you to engage with me at the end, as your insights and perspectives are crucial in shaping the path forward to fulfill your commitment made in the strategic plan. Our ultimate long-term goal is to determine how deeply we are dedicated to building a city where equity is not just a goal, but a reality for all residents. So let's get started with our city's guiding star, the strategic plan. As you know, of course, council has identified 9 strategic outcome areas as shown on the slide. But you also made a commitment explicitly to JEDI. But that commitment wasn't quite defined in your strategic goals document. And yes, I had to have a little fun with this slide. If you find a Baby Yoda, you use a Baby Yoda. So what I've done is I've taken the liberty to suggest some definitions that we all can lean on as we continue to define this work in ways that matter specifically to our community. These definitions come from the One Virginia plan that was created by Dr. Janice Underwood as our former Chief Diversity Officer for the Commonwealth of Virginia, as well as from the Government Alliance for Racial Equity, or GARE, as you'll hear people call it, that we are a member of. I won't read these, but I hope that by taking a glance at this work later, it can be a grounding opportunity. And I want to specifically also acknowledge that this role began as the Deputy City Manager for Racial Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. We will still lead with race, but we also will acknowledge the intersectionality of the people who we have the honor of working alongside and serving. Equality, equity, social equity, the difference matters, and I'd like to ground us in this a little bit. This graphic comes from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and I think, especially for a local government, does a really good job of showing the difference, not just talking about it. In equality, everybody gets the same thing. You'll notice everybody gets the same curb. Everybody gets the same sign. Clearly, it doesn't work for everyone, though. In equity, everyone gets exactly what they need. The young child now has a ramp. She doesn't have to jump off. There's both audible and visual signals letting people know when they can cross or when they shouldn't. The individual who's wheelchair bound is easily able to make it across the street, and the gentleman with the aid for his visual impairment is able to feel through those bumps where he's going. So our friends at Race Forward, who's the parent of GAR, again, recognizes that equality is sameness, and it ignores the realities of the historical exclusion and power differentials among whites and other racialized groups, expanding for our purposes among marginalized persons. Equity, however, is a measure of justice. It ensures that outcomes are uniquely created for what people need, and that is absolutely where we should be focused in on. Which brings us to, well, my boss, who changed my title to the Deputy City Manager of Social Equity, grounding it in the new public administration theoretical framework, but I'm going to bring that to light. I am actually going to read this slide because many people don't know the idea of social equity from a public administration standpoint. And it's the fair, just, and equitable management of all institutions that serve the public directly or by contract. The fair and equitable distribution of public services and implementation of public policy, and the commitment to promote fairness, justice, and equity in the formation of public policy. So let's create a framework to analyze this. We've got social equity, we've got racial equity, we've got justice, diversity, inclusion. That's a lot of steps. See if we can make it a little easier. First, let's talk about what in the world are the social determinants of health. What is this crazy girl who has a public health degree talking about? The social determinants of health are the underlying community-wide social, economic, and physical conditions in which people are born, live, work, and age. As you can see, those determinants include factors like neighborhoods and physical environment, social support networks, and access to health care. By addressing these determinants, we can impact health outcomes that are shown at the bottom of the graphic. However, you can also see how many of these determinants local governments like ours can affect, and how without considering equity in our work, we could either, on accident or sometimes not, negatively impact a person's ability to gain health and wellness. So again, why the social determinants of health? First and foremost, promoting community well-being is a cornerstone of local government service. It's why we do what we do every day. It is why we serve. But further, we also know that people do not equally experience the social determinants of health, but they are linked to each other. If a lower-income neighborhood is missing safe sidewalks or access to public transit, this can impact their employment, their ability to go to school, and even their access to healthy food options. And while local governments do not control health, we are the entity that works on key infrastructure for our community. And we also often provide programs that can either support health and wellness or hinder it. So my assignment, I needed to identify and create a framework. So here you'll see I'm going to combine your strategic plan goals with the social determinants of health. And then I was to review our current external programs and processes. For this, I looked at department-led programming, I looked at our financial investments, and I looked at what I'm calling collaborative governance. So that may be a program or an organization where we contribute, and maybe other localities do too. First up, economic stability. So in your strategic plan, so what you'll see, let me explain the slide. The big words are going to be your social determinant of health. I'm going to lay out where in your strategic plan this fits, the city departments that are working on it, and the programs that we already do. The key is, remember, everything I'm listing, we already do. So your strategic plan, economic prosperity, partnerships, transportation, and your commitment to JEDI. I'm not going to read that one anymore. Trust me, you'll see it on every slide. Your city departments include the Office of Economic Development, Social Equity with the Downtown Job Center and Home to Hope, your Department of Human Services, and Transit. City programs that work on economic stability include our GO programs, our KF Teen Internship Program that pays teens to learn to work in certain areas and to grow in maybe where they want to do in their self-determination. The Downtown Job Center absolutely impacts economic stability, but so does the Home to Hope program by welcoming back our individuals who are returning from incarceration and helping them stabilize, which includes through employment or education to get employment. Our free fare program in transit, how much could that save a family if for them to be able to get to and fro? We also recently were accepted into the ICMA Economic Mobility and Opportunity Cohort. This program will allow us to start exploring how we can better work on economic stability and economic prosperity. And then your investments, such as in the Beacon Kitchen or in our community colleges workforce programs. All right, neighborhood and physical environment, y'all. This is a dense slide. I am not going to read all of it. However, with your strategic plan, that's climate action, that's housing and public safety, it's recreation, arts and culture, transportation. Your department's Office of Community Solutions, Human Rights, Sustainability, CPD, CFD, Human Services, NDS, Parks and Rec, Public Works. And their programs range everything from the 2023 Development Code and Zoning Ordinance to the sheriff who provides our triad program, the commissioner of revenue who provides the elder and disabled tax relief and the CHAP program. All of this fits into how we can support people having a healthy neighborhood, healthy physical environment, healthy, safe place to be. Education, clearly your education goal, partnerships as well, also transportation and commitment to JEDI. Your city departments include Human Services, Office of Economic Development, and the Office of Social Equity's Downtown Job Center. This organization will soon be launching an organization-wide language access services. It's really hard to contact your government if you don't speak English right now. We're going to fix that. Everything from any language that one of our community members may speak to American Sign Language will be able to provide on demand and with quality. You all have budgetary investments, of course, in Charlottesville City Schools, but also in our regional library system that helps individuals. Our Downtown Job Center recently held an adult literacy program last week, and your vibrant community fund investments include Head Starts, early childhood education, and after-school programs. Food, economic prosperity and partnerships. Your departments are Parks and Rec, Human Services, Social Services, and Neighborhood Development Services. Your Parks and Rec team with the Farmers Market has the Virginia's Fresh Match SNAP Purchase Partner Program, which means individuals can use their SNAP benefits to buy fresh foods at any farmer's market. They also run the Virginia Department of Education Special Nutrition Program Summer Food Service, ensuring that our youth have access to quality meals even when they're not in school. Your social services team provides the ability to sign up for benefits like TANF, SNAP, and WIC. And the 2021 Comprehensive Plan actually covers food. It would allow for example, chickens in backyards, gardens, etc. Your community and social context is part of your organizational excellence, partnerships, public safety, recreation, arts, and culture. Your Office of Social Equity's Home to Hope program, the Community Solutions Office, and communications, as well as the police department. First, you all provide CPA TV. That's a way for individuals, whether you have cable or not, you can stream as well, to watch the meeting we're in right now, to hear from their fellow community members who host shows, to hear from maybe a council member who has their own show as well. The Office of Community Solutions hosts our Neighborhood Leaders Meeting, and the Charlottesville Police Department has its Citizens Academy. Finally, healthcare system. Might think this one is strange, but trust me, it's not. This fits in your strategic plan under economic prosperity, organizational excellence, partnership, and transportation. Your offices include Office of Social Equity, Human Services, Social Services, and Utilities. For transportation, again, we're making sure that people are able to get to healthcare access. Your Department of Social Services ensures people are signed up with Medicaid benefits. The West Haven Cares Clinic is hosted by the Department of Human Services. And utilities as well, wastewater and sewer. That's big in making sure people stay healthy. You also have intergovernmental investments with the Blue Ridge Health District and Region 10's Community Service Board, and fundamental investments with the Charlottesville Free Clinic. All right, Council, here's your time. What are your thoughts? How do you consider health and well-being as our option? Did anything in those laundry lists surprise you? But most important, is anything missing?
That's a lot.
Isn't it?
Could you go back to the slide at the beginning where you showed the social determinants of health?
I
I want to
can,
make sure I understand how the linkages here work.
sure.
So each of these that you're reading off here are one of the social determinants of health?
Correct. So
Health.
economic stability is a social determinant of health.
Yeah.
And
And you're showing the linkage to the work that we already do.
I am. So if you look at the chart under economic stability, you've got employment, income, expenses, debt, medical bills, support. That all makes sense. And I'm going to read two, and then I'm going to go to those slides. Under neighborhood and physical environment, housing, transportation, safety, parks, playgrounds, and walkability. And all of those can feed into each other. But if you have the healthy determinants of health, then you have lower mortality, lower mobility, higher life expectancy, lower healthcare expenditures, so on. So I'm flipping slowly so I don't hurt people. So economic stability is your social determinant of health. It fits under your strategic plan under economic prosperity, partnerships, and transportation. Programs that we're already running that help with economic stability are things like the GO program. But by looking at the social determinants of health, my goal was to have us think broader, have us think about social equity. And what we know is that the social determinants of health are not necessarily felt the same way by every person. Again, if in a community we choose to delay building a sidewalk, that means they maybe can't walk for exercise like their doctor wants them to. That may mean that a parent doesn't feel safe having their child walk to school or walk to a friend's house. That may mean someone who needs to walk and is coming home may get injured. But the only people who control building sidewalks is your local government. Healthcare system can't fix that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I get the concept. It's, I think, a really good way of taking something that feels abstract and making it more concrete with the social determinants of health, and then integrating it the way you have here with departments and programs and the strategic plan.
And I apologize, this one was a busy slide, but we do a lot in this area.
Yeah.
Now, I really appreciate this summary of basically this is what our government does. I
Yeah.
think it's very clear, it's very helpful, and then tying it into the theme of social determinants of health makes it easy to approach. You can think, how does it affect me? But then also, how does it affect my community? Because ultimately, we are a community, and that everything ties into everything else. My question was more about, this is handy to look at, and it's comprehensive, and it's all kind of tidy. If someone were to, like, I think this would be useful to put up somewhere with all of these different things linked. So, because this is a handy presentation on what the city does that is accessible. And sometimes when I go to the city website, I know we are in the process of redesigning it. I'm like, where do I go? And then I search, and I'm like, I have 15 kind of relevant responses. And so I think it would be useful to somehow get this presentation with all of these things linked somewhere on the website in an easily findable place, so people can learn about what does the city government do and where is this linked. And I'm sure the website probably already does that in some context, but this in particular is kind of would be a good landing page to have.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely. My goal was to hear any feedback that you all may have, then hear feedback from the city manager, and incorporate that. The Office of Social Equity does not yet have a page, but it is for this reason of wanting to make sure when we launch, I had everything that someone may need or have questions about, not that I can't add later, but to make it as robust as possible and by launch. So that is part of my plan, and I'm glad to hear you that it would be helpful.
Yeah.
I think, too, when we update the strategic plan, which I guess we should revisit annually, is that what's best practice?
Well, we have to flesh it out, because you gave us outcome areas, and now we're going to go way below the surface with more information and bring that back.
But it's just that when we do our check-ins with the strategic plan, that we have this tool with us.
That will be your annual measurements.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it. I think it's great.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd say it's like surprising, but I'd never thought about health and well-being being a kind of meta framework that encapsulates pretty much everything the city does, and that being like the primary lens you use as opposed to just one among many, which I guess was kind of surprising. And likewise, I knew about all these programs, but it's always interesting to see all of them there, because even though I know all these programs and we regularly make decisions, it's kind of easy to forget about everything we already do, which is very, very extensive, especially compared to our peer localities. And I guess the biggest thing that came to mind is kind of how would we operationalize a lot of these goals and measure where are we making progress, where is nothing changing, where are we getting worse, particularly as it relates to kind of like how would we measure, particularly in like the economic area, where are we making progress on income, wealth disparities, and how that ties into so many other things. And then a final thought that just came to mind is kind of in some of these areas, how do we measure, not that this kind of thing would ever happen, but let's say the city displaced all the mobile home residents and then they were replaced with young professionals making $80,000 a year, and
It never happened?
Please don't wish that on me.
not that we would ever, have that kind of thing happen, but in some of these social determinants of health, how would you capture that some of these problems that we used to measure, those people have just been forced out of our community, and maybe we're technically making on paper progress in some of these areas, but the causal reason for that is we've just pushed out our poorest residents. And how do you measure that is something else that came to mind.
No, those are all really great questions and very helpful. Measurement, I am a big evidence-based, data-driven kind of person. You will be happy to know that we are working right now with the UVA Equity Center to mirror Albemarle's Equity Atlas. We are giving it a shiny new name that we will talk about when we display it. But the goal by doing this work alongside the county is because we know that there may be an individual who lives in the county but works in the city. We know there may be an individual who works in the city, but who lives in the city but works in the county. We also will be able to get longitudinal data to be able to capture many of the elements that you see there. So we are looking at things like income, we're looking at rent burden, we are looking at race, we're looking at gender as well, and gender identity. And by working with the Equity Center, we have the access to their data and statisticians who are also dedicated to equity to be able to do this correctly. Also, many of the programs actually already track and do a pretty good job of that tracking. The last part of what you said, Council Member, I think the benefit is that by having this role, I generally get to be honest. And many of the community members who are in here will tell you that's kind of the one thing that I promise them: I will not lie to you. If that happened, if your scenario happened, I believe that it would be important, and I know that the city manager believes transparency is important, where you put that asterisk on your data. This is the data that you would find if you went and Googled it. However, we need you all to know that 30 homes were displaced, and that changed the trajectory. I believe that by being honest with data, you're giving good quality data and you're really allowing people to analyze it. And the honest answer is people would be able to find that those 30 homes were moved. So might as well be honest about it and tell them and analyze. It could also be then, let's say those individuals are displaced, but they found residents in the county. By our partnership with the county's equity team, we would be able also to make sure that they link that as well. So we can make sure that people know that those individuals did find residents and are safe. They are not, for example, unfortunately, part of a new number for our unsheltered individuals. So I think we'll be able to do that.
Yeah, and that's helpful, and there's likely no other way to really do it. I guess it just all depends on putting the data in context and how we interpret it, because that's just, hopefully not, but potentially a recent theoretical example. But then citywide, I've just seen many cases where in neighborhoods, like the percent of households rent burdened, average life expectancy, percent with certain health conditions has declined, but then that directly correlates with the percentage of black homeowners in those neighborhoods declined by half, and the average income doubled. And kind of, how do we make sure we're always kind of putting it in that context?
Absolutely, and I also think our work with the ICMA program that we were just recently accepted into, our proposal was to do basically an analysis of our community, because we don't see one that is as accurate as we would like when we think about the economic prosperity and mobility of our community. One of the things that I've noticed is oftentimes, of course, data is going to go by census tract. We talk about neighborhoods. Sometimes those align well, sometimes they don't. In the work we did with the National League of Cities before for the Capstone Challenge with City Health data, we ended up having to help them understand how to lay over our neighborhoods to census tracts, and they were able to extrapolate that data, but we had to inform them, this is how we speak about our community. I did want to tell you all, I gave you a bit of a cheat. So the final slide talks about the complexities and the gaps that myself and City Manager Sanders were able to identify. The first three you're going to see are complexities for the organization, which includes the capacity. Do we have the capacity to add any other programs or expand something? Is there mission drift? Should your local government necessarily be providing underwater basket weaving lessons, even if it will increase public health? Maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't. There's questions. And also our own internal social equity work. City manager allowed me to take the liberty of listing that because I believe that we have to work internally and externally. And I'll tell you, I haven't done as much internally as maybe I would like. For some gaps, we saw gaps in childhood and early childhood education. We saw gaps in 0 to 15% AMI housing, which piggybacks nicely with your 4 o'clock presentation. Also accessible 51 to 60% AMI housing. Gaps in ALICE supportive programs. ALICE stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, but Employed. So those are individuals who earn too high of an income to receive most supports. However, they really can't make it. They are that one paycheck away from not being able to make it. There also could be some additional reentry supports and refugee and immigrant supports, entrepreneurship and MIT living wage work. I recently looked at a new ALICE dashboard where if you think of our industry, lots of it is in food service. On average, those individuals are earning about $9 an hour. That is nowhere near MIT living wage work for even a single adult.
MIT.
Yes, as in Massachusetts Institute for Technology.
The
data people.
Yes, the data people.
I went to Georgia Tech, so I won't comment on it.
I mean, that's fine. I went to Virginia Tech, so I get it.
So what is MIT living wage work?
MIT living wage will depend on the size of your household. So I'm happy to send that to you all because it does depend on household. On average, I believe when there is a 2-adult household with both adults working and 1 child, they need to earn at least, I believe it was $24 an hour, both parents.
Collectively or each?
Each.
Okay.
And some of that, the reason why it depends on your household, because if you are a single adult, of course, I don't have to add in the cost of things like childcare, which is very, very high.
And they're generally considered, right, to be the standard for having the most accurate data on actual cost of living in each locality.
Correct, yes. MIT is considered the standard bearer, and even ALICE, which is compiled by United for ALICE, they will use MIT living wage as how they're looking at who is asset limited, income constrained, but employed. We also have, of course, access to mental health care and traditional health care. LGBTQIA supports, and again, our focus on intersectionality. So for example, we have a Black male mentorship program that is absolutely needed, but we don't necessarily have a like program for young women. We don't necessarily have a like program for individuals that could be from other marginalized communities.
So you're saying these, particularly the things on the right, is sort of your kind of initial take of places where we've got holes?
Yes, sir.
Yep. Yep, that makes sense. So I guess we can take the slides ourselves and think about them some more and
Absolutely.
try to provide other feedback. I don't know if there's
Yes.
any additional feedback tonight.
Not, or sorry, go ahead.
The one thing that, and maybe it's in there, and you were running through it with sufficient speed, I didn't notice. But as we've talked, particularly about a year ago about this time, we were talking about the question of workforce development and K-Tech, and sort of expressing, I expressed the goal that the city of Charlottesville would adopt the goal that nobody gets to 18 years old in Charlottesville without either a high school diploma, a path to college, and or a trade. Is that embraced in there someplace, and if not, could it be more so, more evident?
Sure. So under economic stability, you all are already investing in PVCC's workforce development, so those are options and opportunities. Under education, I did list your investment, of course, in Charlottesville City Schools. I think as the city schools continue to develop their program with K-Tech, and they are in constant conversation with the city manager, we will certainly be able to continue to work forward with that. But at least last I heard, they're still sort of ironing out where they really want to go with that. But I absolutely believe that that can be a critical part of both the education frame as well as your economic mobility frame.
Because obviously part of the problem is we've got to get more $30 an hour jobs.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And you do also have other opportunities to increase trade. For example, the GO programs include Go Solar and Go
Right.
Cook. So those are options. And the Downtown Job Center works very closely with UVA's Pipelines and Pathways program that will help train individuals to be EMTs or phlebotomists, for example, to help them learn that skill to then get the job at UVA Health.
Okay, this has been really excellent. Thank you so much. So we'll get a copy of this and we can give you more feedback and.
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Quick question. Has a presentation that kind of put together like a clearinghouse of everything we've done like this ever happened before? Or is this the first time did you create this?
I did. I made
Okay.
this. And
Great.
I don't know if something came before me.
Yeah.
But for this one, it was part of the work I did to try and find a frame that I thought would help us to, again, kind of normalize this work as well as see it in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I asked for two reasons. One, because I was wondering if there was something we could compare it to, like a historical thing that we did like 3 things, now we're doing all these things. But also just because this will provide that for the future as a benchmark, and just kind of lets us get a handle on all the things we have going.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
So I'll wrap it up since this is still my report, so I'll
Oh,
close
yeah.
it out and just say,
All right.
this is about the intersection of think and do. We've been thinking about a lot. We've been talking about a whole lot. What is it more that we need to do? And I think that's really the point of this particular exercise, in being able to bring this type of presentation to you so that we can frame where do we go from here. We're always interested in going somewhere else. And the question before us is to really take stock of where are we first, so that we can then define where it is that we want to go from here.
Yeah, and it's encouraging that we are doing a lot and we have come a long way, but we have certainly a long way to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. City Manager?
That will be it.
Okay, so we will now move on to the action items. The first of which is an ordinance amending and reordaining Chapter 10, Water Protection of the Code of the City of Charlottesville to establish a water erosion and stormwater management program consistent with the Code of Virginia. Mr. James Freeze will introduce the item for public hearing. Thank you, sir.
All right, good evening, Vice Mayor Pinkston and members of council. My name is James Freeze. I'm Deputy City Manager for Operations. And yeah, we have 2 items before you this evening. I could do them both together or one at a time. But both
They
are.
both require public hearings.
Yes, sir.
Is there an issue? Does anyone see an issue with that? Lloyd?
You could just frame it and then just open and
Okay.
close each public hearing. It's fine.
Okay, so this is item 17, items 17 and items 18. I already read item 17. Item 18 is an ordinance amending and reordaining Chapter 10 Water Protection of the Code of the City of Charlottesville to update the city's stormwater utility program consistent with Section 15.2-2114 of the Code of Virginia. We'll let you give the presentation for both, then we'll do the public hearing for the first and close it, vote, and then do the second.
Sounds great, thank you. So the first item refers to, about a year ago, the State Water Control Board adopted new regulations that combine the Virginia Erosion and Sediment Control Program and the Virginia Stormwater Management Program. And then they gave MS4 communities like Charlottesville a year to implement those changes within our own ordinances. And so that's what we're bringing forward to you today. We have until July 1 to combine these ordinances combine these 2 ordinances together into one single program. So the ordinance you received in your packet does exactly that. We used the model ordinance that they published for us for all communities as our baseline, and then we rolled into that the more stringent requirements that we have here in Charlottesville for example, when the thresholds for when erosion and sediment control requirements are triggered or stormwater management requirements are triggered. Our requirements are more stringent than what the state has. So we took that model ordinance, we rolled in our requirements, rolled in various particular specificities for the city, and otherwise have it for you here tonight.
Great.
The second item is doing a number of things, but fundamentally, like the first one, is a cleanup and compliance item. So since 2014, the city has had a stormwater utility fee, which we use those funds for our water resource protection program, basically to repair or replace public stormwater infrastructure, to implement capital projects and improvements, and things like that. The stormwater fee is billed twice a year and is calculated based on the amount of impervious area on a given parcel. This update is doing a couple things. One is recognizing that last year we moved that program from the Department of Public Works into the Utilities Department. So we've had to go through that ordinance and make that change. It's similarly bringing this section into compliance with the change in the overall state erosion and sediment and stormwater programs. And it's also addressing some legislation that was actually back in 2015 and required some updates to our ordinance at that time as well. So 3 different things happening in that last section.
Okay.
And happy to take any questions from y'all on those 2 items.
Any clarifying questions on either one of those?
So just to reiterate, there's no substantive change in terms of the power and authority of our local regulations.
You got it. No substantive change, no change in the standards that apply.
And we're now consistent, or will be consistent with state law. And I think June 30th was the deadline to get this resolved?
Yeah, we're supposed to have it in place July 1.
Got it.
So yes.
Okay.
So one of the things we are requesting is that council consider waiving the second reading on these items.
Yeah, I think we can.
And we do that with 4
Yeah.
yeses.
Yeah.
That's our favorite little side move, isn't it? Lloyd, anything?
I got nothing.
Sasha? Okay, so we need to do public
I do have
hearings.
something to add. Just
Okay.
wanted to clarify that the ordinance that was in the packet did have a date in it of June 18th for the public hearing, but the public hearing was advertised for the 17th, which is tonight, so we are in compliance.
Okay,
And that change will be made once it's certified.
okay.
Thanks.
So we're going to do 2 public hearings. The first one is for the first item. It's item 17 on the agenda. I'm not going to read it again. So I will now open the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to speak on this item?
I think it might be number 16.
I think it just goes to the end.
Oh, okay.
item 10 because of the
Oh,
fact
because
that we
item
shifted
10's
things around.
screeched, right.
Yeah. In any event, what was originally action item 17 on our agenda, I'll just read it again. Ordinance amending and reordaining Chapter 10, Water Protection of the Code of the City of Charlottesville to establish a Virginia erosion stormwater management program consistent with the Code of Virginia. I've opened that now for public hearing. Is there anyone here who'd like to speak on this item? Okay. With no speakers, this public hearing is now closed. Council, is there any further discussion? Okay. Could I please have a motion for approval of this item?
I would move approval for an ordinance amending and reordaining Chapter 10, Water Protection of the Code of the City of Charlottesville to establish a Virginia erosion and stormwater management program. And do we need to state that the second reading will be waived?
Yes, please.
Yes.
And waive the second reading?
Thank you, sir. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay. Council members would please cast their vote. There we go. So the motion passes 4-0. Okay, we'll move to the next item, which was 18 in the published agenda. Again, I'll just read it again. Ordinance amending and reordaining Chapter 10, Water Protection of the Code of the City of Charlottesville to update the city's stormwater utility program consistent with Section 15.2-2114 of the Code of Virginia. I will now open a public hearing, the public hearing on this matter. Is there anyone here who would like to speak on this matter? Okay, if not, then this public hearing is now closed. Council, are there any further discussions on this? Okay, could I please have a motion on this matter?
I would move approval for an ordinance amending and reordaining Chapter 10, Water Protection of the Code of the City of Charlottesville to update the city's stormwater utility program consistent with Section 15.2/2114 of the Code of Virginia, again with a waiving of the second reading.
Thank you. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Okay, please cast your vote. The motion passes 4-0. Thank you, Mr. Freeze.
Thank you very much.
All right. Excellent. So now we're moving on to the next item on the agenda. Item 19, a resolution authorizing the adoption of the Transit Strategic Plan. Mr. Garland Williams will present. Good evening, Mr. Williams.
Good evening. This is going to be short and sweet.
Our favorite.
Vice Mayor Pinkston, members of council, the resolution you have before you basically acknowledges that we are putting forward as our legislative requirement the Transit Strategic Plan. It authorizes us to move forward based on what is written in the plan. It's non-binding, but it also acknowledges that council has seen and is authorizing us to submit the plan to the state. So we're asking for your authorization to adopt this resolution, which signals to them that you have seen it and are authorizing us to submit the plan because you authorize us to do so.
Excellent. Does anyone on council have any clarifying questions?
Just one, I think I know the answer, but just for the public, we heard tonight concerns about bus stop shelters, if the data supported it, hybrid being part of the expansion as well as an app. And there's nothing in this that precludes any of that activity, correct?
That is correct.
Great.
And this matter does not require two votes, correct, or two hearings? Two readings.
My understanding,
Okay.
we have an attorney here.
Simple resolution.
This is a simple resolution. In other words, we vote on it tonight, and it doesn't come back to us in 2 weeks.
No, it's just a resolution.
Okay, all right, thank you, appreciate it. I need help remembering the differences. Okay, so I think we've all had a chance to read the plan, hear the plan. I know being on the RTP, I've seen different versions of this and the MPO, and I know you all been working on it for a long time. I understand it's really, really important for me to go to Illinois this fall.
That is correct.
We have you your spot reserved already,
I've
sir.
got to do some negotiating on the home front, but planning to.
Likewise.
Yeah. So could I have a motion, sir?
Bring Flint. Surely she needs to see champagne.
That's not a bad idea.
I would move to accept the transit strategic plan.
Okay, we have a motion for a resolution authorizing the adoption of the Transit Strategic Plan. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any further discussion? Please cast your vote. Motion passes 4-0. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so that brings us to item 20 on the list. This is a resolution authorizing a minor budget amendment to Community Development Block Grant Program Year 2024-2025 funding awards to reflect an increase in final HUD funds available. Mr. Warren, you're going to present.
Good evening, Vice Mayor Pinkston, councilors, Ms. Thomas. I'm here before you with a big mea culpa to seek your approval for a minor budget amendment to correct a slight discrepancy between the funding awards for CDBG that were approved previously by council and to approve the final slate which reflects accurately the increase in CDBG funding of 6.86%. I can go into the details if you have any specific questions about how this happened. Basically, time crunch when HUD released their final numbers, I dragged in an incompletely updated version of the resolution. Every award, no awards will change in terms of who's receiving the money. They'll all receive a proportionate increase, and this reflects the full 438,600 and something award from HUD.
So what was the original amount? I mean, what is the difference, I guess, between what we approved originally and now in terms of the total?
6.8% of the
6.8%
increase in the total allocation and each individual funding award.
Okay, so it basically distributes across those.
Yes.
But there's actually no difference in the total amount awarded, but simply the subcategories.
Correcting the awards. All right.
Okay, so the total amount is the same?
Yes.
So is it that it went, instead of it all, that 6% going to these various items, more of it went to like the total management, the planning piece?
No, it's a little bit more prosaic and embarrassing than that.
Okay.
So HUD typically releases their allocation numbers in February. They didn't release them until May 7. So we went before Planning Commission. I drafted the staff memo, the approval resolution for the annual action plan, and the appropriations resolutions for CDBG and home, uploaded those into Civic Clerk to get on the agenda for council. It's a nationwide problem that HUD released the numbers so late because everybody has to get their plans locally approved, and we can't start any of the funded programs, which are supposed to start July 1st, until we have local approval from an elected board, such as yourself. So I uploaded them. The task force took a vote April 17 on awards based on the numbers that we had from last year.
Which was how much?
About 410,000.
Because that's the question.
Yeah.
That's it.
So last year's numbers were the 410,468. Because we did not have the updated numbers, I calculated out the percentages. The percentages down to I think it was like the 100 trillionth is what the task force actually voted on. When we got the new numbers in they were released by the White House and HUD on May 7. The deadline to upload into Civic Clerk was May 9. The majority of our time on the 8th and the 9th was trying to figure out what it meant because the home allocations were cut by close to 20%, over 17%, and that's a severe impact for a lot of the programs that we were hoping to fund. So we spent a lot of time talking through that, trying to digest that, and then when the deadline came up to upload the memo, I had not gone through and completely updated the awards, so.
Okay, so this is basically
Fixing a typo.
fixing a typo. Yep.
Yes.
Which happens to the best of us. Okay, are we good? Any further conversation?
And we have here the text of a slightly different resolution with paragraph 3 reflecting the new language that was recommended by Mr. Freeze.
Okay. This
So-
is not in the packet?
Paragraph 3 is different from what's in the packet.
Okay, should we read it?
Sure. Yes.
Okay, so if you go to the packet on page 259, there's an additional paragraph. We'll read into the,
It's a replacement
it's a
paragraph.
replacement paragraph, I'm sorry, the third paragraph. And whereas appropriation resolution number R-24-061, approved by council on June 3rd, 2024, approved the correct CDBG total allocation of $438,617, but did not accurately reflect the specific amounts proposed to be awarded, and therefore did not accurately reflect the full award for each approved sub-recipient program. Now, therefore. So that's the only difference.
So
Okay.
but the motion is still the same. If I read that, we're all good.
Correct.
Shall we?
And more importantly, all the numbers in it are now right.
Yes.
Yeah. If you would please make the motion.
I move to approve the resolution appropriating community development block grant funds to be received from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development in support of the program year 2024 through 2025 annual action plan as revised to reflect an increase in anticipated CDBG funding from HUD in the approximate amount of $438,617.
Second.
Got there.
Any further discussion? Please cast your vote. Carries 4-0. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so item 21 is a written report on the Sister Cities Commission's annual report.
Now, before we have one more action item,
Right.
go back and
Yeah.
get what had been number 10.
So what was number 10, which we will introduce between items 20 and 21 on the original?
The gas connection fee.
Right. Give me 2 seconds and I'll be there. Which was the ordinance to amend and reordain Chapter 31 utilities of the Code of the City of Charlottesville, 1990, as amended, to establish a connection fee for new gas service. We'll do that at the end of the action items after what was originally number 20.
Which means now.
Which means now.
And I'm happy to.
Okay.
Since I requested its removal, and I don't want to waste everyone's time if a majority isn't in agreement, but basically I think since we moved this to the consent agenda, at least I feel like I've heard from members of the community who I think have made a reasonable case that the cost may not necessarily be on the actual total cost, including labor, for the new connection fee. Based on what I've seen from the reports we received, the only specific number is kind of benching it based on what other localities have done. I didn't see any reference to our local parts and labor costs. And so I guess the request is if anyone else feels more comfortable delaying a final decision until we've actually seen specific numbers on what the cost to us as a locality is. So I don't know if that makes sense. But.
It does. I get it. I'm not sure. I mean, if Ms. Hildebrand wants to come speak about this, or Mr. Cullen and some more, I think what they're going to say is this is what they put forward in good faith. And while it might look like it's, benchmark compared to other municipalities, I think they would say this is on average. I get the fact that if someone says, if I called a contractor and there was, 200 feet, it might cost $2,000. But if you've got this service sort of, baked into the work that you do, and you've got your own materials and equipment and whatever, then it's really, I think, up to them to say what they really think it costs them to do, if that makes sense. If you're looking for more like justification or if you just want the number to be higher, I guess.
Well, I
I'm not
guess
sure.
what we have to decide is, do we want to go with this number that was presented, which was based on kind of a comparative set, or do we want to go on what it actually costs to do the project?
Well, I think what they would say, and if they want to come speak to this, I think they would say this is what they think it actually costs.
Can we, let's hear if that's actually what you all. suppose.
So we did look at the actual cost of what, based on the average service line length, because, you know, not every service line is 150 feet. So the average service line length is about 65 feet if you look at average service line length. And then we compared that against the actual cost. You know, that we did that first, and we came up $340. So then we took a look at other municipal government agencies or other government agencies that handle natural gas, and there were, you know, 10 to 15 or so of those that actually have connection fees. There's not very many, but there's a few, and the average mean was $300. So it seemed to make sense, and that's what we proposed.
How much does it cost per linear foot on average? Put in a gas line?
Well, it would be 340 divided by 65, right?
Yeah.
I mean, is it
I mean,
$5 a linear
Yeah.
foot? I mean, that seems mighty low, but I don't,
And
I
it's-
confess,
yeah.
I don't know at all.
Does that count digging it up, the materials, the rent, the equipment, getting there? Like, what is that? What does it include? What's
Well,
the
it's an
process?
average over the course of, you guys have probably done how many per year?
we do, you know, last calendar year, we did 147.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess to Ms. Ostrom's point, do you like total all those up? If someone would ask you what that number is and then you were
No, we didn't total all of this up.
But
We did not.
what is the process if, you know, the contractors show up to do the work? What
It's
is that?
in-house crews.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
or
entirely in-house
the crew.
crews.
The crew shows up and what is it? What do they show up with? What do they do?
I mean, crews show up with their equipment.
Which is?
It's a small trencher. It's not a big backhoe or anything because we don't put anything real deep. And then we have our materials that we show up with.
Like the pipes and things.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's correct.
I guess if someone were to say, could you give me a time and materials type estimate on something, just, you would be comfortable with a $300, $340 number?
If somebody was going to not do something if somebody was going to install something, gas, they're non-qualifying gas appliances, the rate would be higher. If they were going to be something that was a generator, we don't get, they would be higher.
So we're still kind of subsidizing? Or if it was a non-qualifying appliance, we would be charging extra?
Yes, we would. It would. We would charge extra if it was a non-qualifying appliance.
And that was a part of the recommendation.
Yes.
Is that a non-qualifying connection would be charged at a higher rate. That
what was
340 only applies to just the simple things.
Yeah, the simple. That's correct.
And how long does it take to dig a 65-foot trench?
It doesn't take long. I mean, we can do.
An hour?
It's probably not even that long. Yeah, it's not even that
So
long.
you had, let's see,
I'll look this tool up.
2 folks working 16 hours times $150 an hour.
Oh, wow.
I assume there's a meter installed as well.
Yeah, we don't include the meter cost because it remains, those things will last 40 years. And it's an asset of ours. Okay. It's ours. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the issue I have with this whole thing, and I appreciate the point you're making, both of y'all. If I were to just sort of eyeball this and say there was 2 people working a day doing this work at 16 hours, I don't know what they'd be making, say, with a loaded rate of $50 an hour. That's $800. And then if you had, a couple $100 in pipe, then you're north of $1,000. But that's just me figuring something out on a calculator on a dais, and it sounds like just maybe the cost structure you've set up is such that that's what it costs. I don't know. So.
If council desires us to revisit this, we could certainly do it.
You were kind of indicating back there it takes less than a day?
it definitely takes less than a day. We can probably do 3 or 4 of these in a day. Yeah.
Cool. It's pretty efficient.
Which would suggest taking $1,000 and dividing it by 4.
Yeah, I'm in this kind of work for a living. I have a hard time believing you can do it for $350, but again, that's not this is your shop, not my shop. So I don't know what all you guys,
Yeah,
is
well,
there more you feel like you need to like sort of cost analysis or some sort of historic?
I mean, I'm in the same place. I don't think this, the problem, we've heard from community members a cost estimate that the difference is like 10 times higher in terms of the estimate of what the actual cost may be likely to be. And just given that discrepancy, we have received no specific data on the materials or actual cost to the utility. We have received that data on comparable rates from other localities, but that's all I've seen. So I just still wonder what is that discrepancy of 10 times, and maybe that other information is just completely off and wrong, but I just don't know.
Well, I think part of it too has to, if I were to go hire a contractor to go do something, it'd be like all sort of, there would be no economies of scale. Whereas if they're doing this all the time, there would be, but.
What something I
mean,
know
I will say when we compare in-house to outside, it's always substantially less. You can't, there really is no comparison.
And we did clarify the difference between the gas hookup versus a water sewer hookup last
Yes,
time.
we
And
did the
why
facility.
that discrepancy is so much larger. But I think where we ultimately have to decide is, yes, this could potentially be exactly what it costs, and that is what it is. But if we want to look at this as a disincentive for natural gas hookups, and we want to increase it based on that, we have the leeway to do that.
I think the only caution I would have about that is we can't just like come up with a ridiculous number, because then that becomes arbitrary and capricious or something like that. It needs to be
statute
based on.
specifically says it needs to be reasonable.
Yeah. So it can't be set so high just to prevent, you know what I'm saying?
Right, sure. But, sorry, our statute or a state statute?
State.
Okay, and reasonability is the legal term?
Reasonable probably means what the
Yeah.
director of utilities tells you.
Right. So we already charge a different amount for the non-qualifying items. Would it be reasonable to just charge the same amount as the non-qualifying items? So that there isn't a gap, but instead of bringing the non-qualifying items down, we bring the qualifying items up? Does that?
But they're not proposing to bring the non-qualifying items.
Right, I'm saying that's what we could do and meet in the middle. It wouldn't be an arbitrary, maybe it'd still be an arbitrary number, but it would match, I think it would suffice the reasonableness.
Well, it lends the question that reasonableness could still be called into question, I think. There's probably a little more work that would need to be done before we could simply apply that.
Right, and maybe this is not something that happens tonight. I mean, what I applaud is that it is not zero. I'm happy about that. And I think I don't want to delay that, so maybe we move forward
Right,
with
we were
340.
bringing you what we heard that you wanted, so
Yeah,
that's
we
why
move
we have
forward
it.
tonight with 340 with the idea that we've got space to revisit this later with maybe some math where there is not a discrepancy and we veer towards the higher end for all of the installations.
In order to accept that, I'd want clarity as to when would you like to hear something back on the item.
Well,
so
what
that
does
we can
everyone
do
else
that.
think first?
Well, I think we should just go ahead and get this resolved. I mean, I don't know that the total amount of money we'd be talking about is that drastic over the course of a year.
What's
but
the rate
by
for a
the-
non-qualifying appliance?
I need to get back with you on that, but it's higher.
Okay, I would like to know
Typically because
that.
you're not doing them all together. We think about mobilization associated with it too. And typically when you do these new connections for qualifying appliances, they're kind of all in the same spot.
Because
They're all
it's like
for
a new
one
development?
Yeah,
And-
that's right.
So I guess maybe.
So there's not a
Well, sorry, but.
I mean, but I do have one thing to suggest is that, and you may not want to wait this long, but we do look at all our fees every year during our annual rate setting. So if you did consider this, we certainly would revisit again
That would be
during
my
next
suggestion,
year's
and
rate
just
setting.
See what the first year's experience tells you.
Yeah, and that could work. And my suggestion was going to be, again, my goal is to just have 100% confidence that it's reflecting the actual total cost. It sounds like a majority is ready to move forward, which is fine. I completely understand that. My suggestion was that there's going to be a baked-in community engagement period before implementation. So maybe once implementation begins, we revisited it, because that's going to be
January 1st.
right.
Yeah, because the plan was to make some sort of notification to the people that are in the midst of installing natural
I
gas.
guess what I would like to see, Ms. Hildebrand, next year when we vote on this again, if there's a way, if it's not too onerous to have your accounting staff, just, this is what it costs, this is a rough number for what it costs for each one of these installs, even if they can just track it in an Excel spreadsheet, even if it's a really sort of crude measure or number, but then we can at least say we've got a little more data on this is what it actually costs to install.
We could do that.
That would be
Yeah.
helpful.
I'm okay with it.
But I don't think we'll have that before July 1.
Sure.
Okay. all right.
Yeah.
So can we go ahead and vote on this?
Yes.
We voted on it, we saw it last time, so we took it off the consent agenda and we have it separate. So if we vote on it now,
I would move
it's
its
done,
approval.
right?
Yes.
Okay.
I move its approval.
Michael, you want to put the second in there?
No.
Okay. Okay, I guess I can second it. I'll second it. Let's vote. Uh-huh.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank y'all very much. So that brings us to the end of the meeting.
And we've got written reports.
We do have written reports from the Sister City Commission Annual Report, which is in the packet. Councilors, are there other items for consideration, or do you have any questions for the city manager for follow-up?
I do not.
Okay. With that said, we are now at the final speaking opportunity for members of the public. Individuals in council chamber may raise your hand to be recognized to speak. Each speaker will be given up to 3 minutes. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Come on up.
Thank you very much, and I do want to comment a little bit. I'm Robin Hoffman. Ashley Marshall, thank you so much. I'm a former nurse, worked in a hospital, and have been a community person teaching in the public schools and that sort of thing. And I want to say also, if we don't incorporate our health, we can look at New York City and New Jersey, and people who are unhoused are more apt to look for ways to make money that may not be healthy. Also, we don't have a lot of providers anymore. So having mental health issues and things like that, thank goodness there's telemedicine, telehealth, and all the things that happened during the pandemic. So anyway, so these measures that are happening in Charlottesville are cost effective. I want to say that because, you know, food security and all that stuff is really mental health. So if you don't follow through with quality of life for everybody, then you're going to have the cost of people being sick and impoverished. But I'm really here all this time to announce that I want you all to come to the Botanical Gardens on the 29th between 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock, and I will be teaching you how to paint plein air. And it's free. Everything in the Botanical Gardens is free. Botanical Gardens of Piedmont, I've been a volunteer now for 5 years, and it's an amazing group of people. There's 200 volunteers who have cleared 15 acres of McIntyre Park. In terms of equity, they changed the name to Piedmont, Botanical Gardens of Piedmont, because McIntyre was a segregationist. And so the city has actually helped provide subsidies for a lot of the things, but the grants that are coming and the donations and the 200 volunteers are mostly retired people In fact, the kudzu that was removed and all the trees are going, yay! And that's what we're painting. And that happened because of an 80-year-old man with assault. And I just want to see you all there, and I think you can make it a habit. There's a beginning class, which is on the 29th at 6 and 8. Everybody's invited. If you look on the calendar, you'll see there's going to be an intermediate and an advanced class too, where we go backpacking. So it's under the trees, not in the sun, so I can stay there for 2 hours.
Thank you so much, Ms.
Thank you
Hoffman.
so much.
All right, take care. With no further business, the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, staff, for hanging in here with us.
Thank you.